Hi there, I am super excited for today's video. I am a fellow bibliophile, but I think we all have in our shelves some of those books that are a little bit silly. I love some good silliness in my life. It's very important to me to cultivate silliness, ridiculousness, goofiness. And I don't mean funny books. I mean, when I say silly books, books that by their concept or their author or how the content is handled or their mere existence are ridiculous. Books that are not funny on purpose, but a little goofy, kind of silly that they even exist, and especially exist on my shelves. So today I would like to share with you my 5 silliest books that I own. These are in no particular order, except I am saving the number 1, by far, silliest book that I own for last. So that'll be the special treat at the end. I'm going to start with a book that is silly in its concept, that is a bit goofy in the very idea that is the book. It's called Doggone It by Spencer Quinn. It is the first book in the Chet and Barney mystery series. It is an entire mystery told from the point of view of a dog. Now that is a very silly concept, but this book is really only minimally silly because it's good. It's really fun. A problem that I often have with mystery books is that I feel the main character just kind of sits around and waits for things to happen to them. And the detective in this book is very much like a classic novel detective in detective series, like modern detective series. He's a bachelor who lives alone, and he's kind of dragged into this mystery, and he makes bad decisions because of ladies and just general doofusness, which I think is pretty standard for a lot of like modern mysteries. But he has a dog. The dog is with him the whole time, and the dog is much smarter than he is, and the dog effectively solves the mystery. I really loved this. It is a silly concept that is actually executed quite well, and I do recommend, if you like mysteries at all, or you just like books with that involve dogs. I also have a cozy mystery series with a dog sidekick, but unfortunately it is not from the point of view of the dog, although there is a lot of dog involvement. The series is called Rising Sun Rescue Mysteries. They're cozy mysteries. I wouldn't say this one is really a cozy, a bit more action-packed than that genre generally is, but I definitely recommend this and mine because of the very cute and competent dogs. The next book is very silly, and I'm outing myself as a ridiculous person. I'm trying to not pick things that are like things I really enjoy and then I show them to you and I'm like, aren't I so quirky? But probably some of this video is gonna feel like that because I'm a millennial and that is what we do. But this book is Suicide Squad. It is the novelization of the movie. The first movie that a lot of people didn't like. I thought it was fun. You know, I thought it was a good time. It's kind of funny because the Suicide Squad was actually a very important movie for me. I did like it. I thought it was a lot of fun, but I thought that I would have written it better. And so I told myself, well, you know, put up or shut up. You know, stop saying, oh, I would have done this script so much better, go and write it. So, because I don't have $8 million or $800 million or whatever the hell you need now to make like an action superhero movie, I wrote a book. That's actually why I started writing my book Cardinal, because I love Harley Quinn and I felt like I could do a better version of Suicide Squad. But then it kind of took very much a life of its own and became something very different. Cardinal is definitely inspired by like Harley Quinn, but she's also inspired by Deadpool and a lot of other characters like Bugs Bunny, A lot of things that I love are wrapped up in Cardinal. I didn't mean to only pick things that were good segues to talking about the books I've written, but anyway, if you really like action movies, then you'll like my book Cardinal. You'll love it. If you like wisecracking heroines who give no fucks, you'll like Cardinal. So go check that out. I'll put that link in the description below along with my cozy. But besides doing a plug for my own book, I liked the movie The Suicide Squad, and I'm pretty obsessed with Harley Quinn, so I got the official movie novelization. The novelization is by Marv Wolfman, which is a fantastic name. It's a very silly book. It's very close to the movie. I actually think the book does a little bit of a better job connecting character motivations. Like, sometimes things happen in the movie where you're like, okay, that we're just gonna move on from that, I guess. That was not explained at all by any kind of character motivation. But because the book can kind of fill in those plot holes with like character thoughts, I think this actually ends up being a more cohesive story than the original film. But I just like action-packed adventures with anti-heroes and villains. So that's your cup of tea. Check out Cardinal, and if you liked at all the first Suicide Squad movie, then you might actually enjoy this like I did. It's very silly to have movie novelizations, but like a lot of neurodivergent people, I get very fixated on things, and then I want literally everything that's ever been made about that character or that film or that topic. I imagine that's not just unique to neurodivergent people, like that obsession with things that you love, but then again, maybe not to this degree. The next book is truly silly, is phenomenally silly. It's Ron Burgundy's memoir, Let Me Off at the Top. Subtitle, My Classy Life and Other Musings. Obviously, Ron Burgundy did not quote-unquote actually write this. Sorry to burst your bubble there. Ron Burgundy is a character played by Will Ferrell in the ridiculous, very funny movie Anchorman. And I picked this as a silly book because why do I have a memoir from a misogynist 70s news anchor who doesn't exist? Of course I have this because my family thinks the movie Anchorman is ridiculous. Ron Burgundy is a really good character. Will Ferrell does a really good job with him. He's very silly, very fun. This book's existence is silly, but again, I actually really recommend it if you like reading stuff that's just funny. The ghostwriter, obviously someone actually wrote this. The ghostwriter does a really splendid job of sticking to the character. You actually feel in the whole book like it really is this character from the movie writing this. I love this kind of meta leaking out into the world kind of thing, where you can find media from a movie or the world of a book, and you can find it in the real world. I think that's really fun. It definitely feels very true to the character. It's actually very smart in how dumb it is. And what I mean by that is that the jokes themselves are very clever. There's comedy happening at several levels. There's reincorporation going on. On my creative tips channel that I do called Make Good Creative Network, I talk a lot about comedy because I'm also a comedy writer. And the way that this book is put together is really brilliant. If you are a comedy writer who wants to kind of see an example of really good character writing, I recommend this wholeheartedly. I have no idea if they still print and sell this. As you can see, it was 30% off at Target when I got it. The back says, "My name is Ron Burgundy, and what you have in your hands is a very big deal. It's my life, it's my words, it's my gift to you." Ron Burgundy is a self-obsessed, misogynist news anchor from the 70s. I believe that this book is supposed to have been written after the events of both movies, or at least after the events of the first movie. I think it does a really great job expanding on the universe of the movies. It kind of feels silly to talk about the Anchorman universe, but every movie has its universe. Really good example of character writing, but I think just the fact that this is a memoir of a fictional news anchor makes it one of the silliest books that I own. But I will say it is so convincing. as a memoir, that is where it is on my shelves. It is with the other biographies and memoirs. So that's pretty funny. The second to last silliest book that I own is What Does Woman Want by Timothy Leary. We actually picked this book up. Me and my fiance were both interested in it. I was very interested in the title. What does woman want? It just sounds silly to me. Like, that's not really grammatical. I suppose it's saying, like, woman as some type of archetypal category is how that's working. But it's a silly sounding sentence. It's also by Timothy Leary, who had an interesting life, to say the least. Timothy Leary is one of the guys in the 60s who was a really big proponent of everybody getting high. To simplify it, there's since been controversy that he was working with the CIA to conduct experiments and things like that. I don't know. I'm not getting into all that right now. But I think this book is silly because it has a silly title. And it is very funny. It's a very funny book. It is not feminist. Sometimes I struggle to read books that are not feminist because I am an angry feminist. And that's very important to me. But I do think that if you refuse to read anything ever that's not feminist, you would miss some interesting books, unfortunately. It's definitely a product of its time, and the man writing it, essentially, it is his memoir where he's made himself this, like, incredible hero. But it's also kind of funny, and it's so one-sided, and it's so simple-minded and ego-driven that you feel like he must have been kind of aware of how ridiculous it was. Reading this book with our book club made for a lot of interesting discussion. Discussion about psychedelics and spirituality and history and feminism and misogyny and men and women and higher intelligences and the whole map of human development that Timothy Leary and other people were working out at the time. It's a tremendously interesting book. It is very silly. It's very silly because Timothy Leary makes himself out to be this incredible hero of the times. He has his wife at the time, or his partner at the time, with him, and she is, of course, just obsessed with boning him and having his baby. These are the only personality traits that she has. It's very silly. The back cover copy is very funny. You have Bob Dylan saying, "I didn't do it, I was only robbing the register." Babaram Maharaji saying, "This book does to Soviet America what Solzhenitsyn's, my Russian fiance is going to be ashamed of me, did to Soviet Russia. Burn it at once." H.M. Karl Habsburg, S.J., supposedly said, "I advise against printing this book at the present time. There are only 8 people on the planet who can understand it. 5 of them have read the pre-publication manuscript. The other 3, being high officials of the Vatican, cannot, of course, express their enthusiasm." There's also a very resounding yay of a quote from Robert Anton Wilson, who's also an interesting guy that I like. Really hoping that no one's going to go in the comments and tell me that Robert Anton Wilson did some absolute horrible BS that means I should never read him again. You never know. You never know nowadays. The reason I call this book silly instead of funny is that, and it is funny, but the reason I think it counts as silly is because I'm not sure how much or how little Timothy Leary is taking himself and this book seriously. There is a level of absurdism and self-absorption that may or may not be self-aware. So very interesting. I recommend it for your book club, if your book club likes to talk about deep topics and weird shit. The last of these silly books, the silliest book that I own, and actually the whole reason I decided to make this video, wanting to tell y'all about this book, is why I decided to make this video in the first place. It's called The First Million the Hardest by A.B. Farquhar. It is an old book. It is an autobiography of a multimillionaire, an industrialist who grew up in the 1800s. It was published in 1922. It is apparently a real person. This book is not a joke. It is a real man who wrote a real autobiography. What I love about this autobiography, first of all, the first million the hardest is not the phrase. The first million is the hardest is like a thing that people say, but obviously he felt like that was too expensive to print the is. People will understand what he means. Why go to all the trouble of printing an is that you don't need? And that tells you a lot already about our star, A.B. Farquhar. This is like the 19th century industrialist Forrest Gump. He claims to meet historical figures and have incredible adventures with said historical figures that I can find no proof of whatsoever. Like, the things that he claims to have done and lived through and the people he claims to have met don't make a lot of sense that I can find absolutely no corroboration. For instance, he claims that during his younger years, during the Civil War, he sold a town to the South. That he was in the North, and he decided that to keep this town from being sacked and raided and whatever by the Southerners who were going to attack it, that he would instead sell it to the South. So the South bought this town, like the army, the Confederate Army bought the town, and so he took all that money and gave it to the town, so it acted as like an economic stimulus for the town and kept them from getting attacked. And then, when the Northerners moved back in and saved the town, obviously it doesn't have to honor selling the town to the South, because the North is back. He claims that Abraham Lincoln himself thanked him when other people went to Lincoln and were like, he sold this town to the South, you should call him a traitor, he should be punished as a traitor. And then he claims he talked to Abraham Lincoln and was like, bro, we all understand what went on here. And then Abe Lincoln was like, yeah, you did your best for your community. You're an American hero. And it's just fucking wild. One thing I really love about this book is that this guy really did not have a hard life whatsoever. He had a very nice upbringing. He's not claiming that he came from like poor beginnings. Like, he's very much like, oh, my parents were educated and there were a lot of kids, so they had to be smart about money, but I always was comfortable and I got the education I needed. And my dad helped me start out in business. There is no drudging up pretend drama. He's just like, yeah, I had a nice life and a nice upbringing, and then I turned that into more success. It's like, that's not usually what people do with autobiographies, but okay, man, I'm happy for you. Go off. It's a very interesting look into being a dude in the late 1800s, I think, and like the turn of the century there. It's just like Forrest Gump, except this guy thinks he's a business genius. It's very American dream. It's very like, I put in the hard work and made the good choices and I'm an impressive individual. But he also, like, very much spends the first part of his book, like, thanking his parents. Please excuse my dog's slurping noises as he licks himself. We've all been there. So I think this book is super cool because at this point it's over 100 years old. It's obviously like this guy got into his old age and decided he should publish his life. And he probably embellished a wee bit, shall we say. I found this randomly at a flea market. Like, there was this couple who just sold, like, amazing old books. I think I got this for $1. I got this book for $1, and it was over 100 years old when I found it. So, pretty nuts. If you find a copy, I recommend it. But I also just recommend flea markets and picking up books whose titles catch your fancy and exploring ridiculous autobiographies. I guess that's actually kind of the theme for today. I think most of the books I picked are very silly memoirs. So those are the 5 silliest books that I own. I'm very proud of that last one. It's just one of my favorite books to talk to people about because what an interesting thing. What are some silly books that you own? I would love to hear those in the comments. I, of course, put the books that I plugged in the description. Let me know if you're interested in any of these or if you've read them. I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. And just, let's talk about silly books. Thanks so much for joining me. And let's say bye to the silliest thing in my house, Lyle, my Pitbull.
Say bye, Lyle. Bye-bye. Oh, he's sad. I gotta take him on a walk now. Oh, I know. I gotta stop paying attention to the camera and go on a walk. All right, let's go on a walk. Say bye, Lyle.